What's up everyone, it's the Autistic Scyther here, and when it comes down to video game consoles, I've played so many of them in my life. However, one of my favorites has to be the Nintendo 3DS. Namely because this is one of the few consoles I've had the longest in my life. In fact, I've spent a lot of time playing the Nintendo 3DS and so many of its games that honestly I could say this is one of my favorites. Which 10 are my favorite games to play? Well, that's what this list is going to answer. In this case, we're gonna count down my top 10 favorite Nintendo 3DS games. Rule is, only games I've played, so there are not a lot of games I have, but of course, if I've played at least a good amount of them, they will be on the list. So without further ado, let's get started. Starting off at number 10, we have Bravely Default. Honestly, when it comes down to Square Enix's titles, I have an interesting relationship with them, since I've never played a Square Enix title all that much. In fact, the first one that I ever played was Final Fantasy X and X-2 Remastered for the Nintendo Switch. So, yeah, Final Fantasy was my first exposure to Square Enix and their stable of games. That being said, Bravely Default was kind of a switch up in terms of those sorts of things. And honestly, this is one of the few games I fully enjoyed, and I was floored with how amazing the world is. Granted, it's kind of difficult without a guide, as noticed with the fact that I've gotten all the way to Chapter 2, and the additional fact that it basically repeats 4 times, so I'm not looking forward to that. But even with that, I can honestly say the amount I've actually played are some of the best of the game that I've ever seen. And honestly, there's a good chance, heck, maybe once I get done with Bravely Default, I'll move on to Bravely Second and Bravely Default 2. Who knows? Moving on next to number 9, we have Yokai Watch. Speaking of a game that's difficult to play without a guide, well, Yokai Watch is one of those titles. And naturally, I don't mean the gameplay is that hard. I mean, it's kind of your typical monster collecting game. In this case, it's more so the befriending of the monsters that can get very difficult. In fact, I had to borrow a book from a library in order to take a look at each yokai and finding out what their favorite foods are so they can be befriended. It's weird how it is, but heck, it's kind of fun at the same time. And even with that, even after playing through the game like once or twice, as well as seeing the anime, yeah, honestly, I can see why a lot of people considered Yokai Watch as the Pokemon killer. Granted, more about the latter game later on. And honestly, I'm surprised level 5 went out of business because, honestly, they hit gold with this entire franchise. That's all I'm gonna say. Moving on next, at number 8, we have Kid Icarus Uprising. For those that have seen my top 10 favorite YouTubers, there's countdown, they know that Chugga Conroy was number 1 on that list. And honestly, the fair reason is because his videos and Let's Plays are some that I've enjoyed watching for as long as I can remember. Additionally, it's thanks to Chugga Conroy that he introduced a lot of titles that I've been personally interested in playing for a good amount of time, like Xenoblade and Chrono Trigger. And one such game is Kid Icarus Uprising. And speaking of the fact that this one I had to borrow from and it's because of Chugga Conroy that I decided to borrow this from a library in order to basically play through it. And the fact that Kid Icarus Uprising is a remake of the original title from the 1980s, fairness, this is one of those games that are something. This was one of those games that I was more or less full on enjoying. And it's not just because of the fact that, well, I think I've essentially enjoyed Pit in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. But even with that, even though I got up to the level past the Phoenix, the level for the Immortal Phoenix, that introduced Viridian, the Forces of Nature. Honestly, I can honestly say that if I find a way to get the game again, I'm gonna enjoy playing through the entire thing. Plus, Hades is one of the best video game villains of all time due to how hammy he is. And it's not just because of Alex Rochon, of Hades basically being Alex Rochon's mascot. Which, considering the amount of times Hades has appeared in that Alex Rochon's videos, honestly, it's enjoyable. Again, shout out to Alex Rochon. Moving on next at number 7, we have Kirby Planet Robobot. And yeah, another game that I basically borrowed from a library. Well, and I say game, I mean game. Because again, with Yokai Watch, I actually downloaded it on the Nintendo 3DS when the eShop was still up and running. Which honestly, I can't believe Nintendo shut that down, and I wish we could get back to that. And Bravely Default is a game I actually bought. So, surprisingly enough, out of all of these, 2 of these games are games I actually borrowed from the library. And surprisingly enough, considering how I played through Kirby Triple Deluxe, I knew I had to play this game. And this says a lot since I originally experienced the title throughout the demo. And when I first played through it, I was actually impressed with how it is. And I was like, okay, this is actually pretty cool. And I was not disappointed. And as a nerd, yeah, anything robotic is more, or sci-fi is right up my alley. Granted, it's not the best when compared to a game like Kirby and the Forgotten Land, but honestly, it says a lot. And I love the whole idea of a more technically advanced villain basically using technology to basically turn everything into their advantage. Basically, the Haltman Corporation is basically a corporate entity come to life, or as I should say, capitalism come to life. Plus, honestly, Susie is just one of the most adorable characters in the game, and honestly, I think we need more of her in future titles. And yes, I know Kirby Star Allies exists, but yeah. If we could find some way to bring Susie back into it as somewhat of an ally, I mean, it definitely makes some sense. Hell, we did so with the likes of Bandana Waddle Dee, Daroge, and Elfalin. Why not Susie? Plus, yeah, the 3DS Kirby games kind of have some of my favorite copy abilities as well. And possibly there's a good chance I might do a top 10 of that in the near future. So just, fingers crossed, stay tuned for that. Moving on next, at number 6, we have Super Mario 3D Land. And yeah, I know a lot of people basically don't have that much of a positive reaction to Super Mario 3D Land, considering the fact that it introduced the Golden Leaf, which is fairly controversial in itself. But even with that, the fact that this title was created after the Tohoku earthquake, and Nintendo decided to basically go back to something much more easier and lighthearted, really fits the mold here. And honestly, I can say that this is actually one of my favorites. Granted, 3D World and Odyssey kind of surpassed that, but in all fairness, 3D Land, considering how much I've played Super Mario Land and Super Mario Bros. 3, yeah, it's kind of fair that I enjoyed 3D Land for what it's worth. And in fact, most of the courses and maps are actually pretty amazing, as I have never seen, as I always love seeing the different ways certain styles or types of worlds can be essentially brought in. And honestly, while certain aspects are kind of difficult, Bowser Castle level, basically, they're always just so, it's always just so fun, and in the same time. Also, there is a Zelda mention that I didn't realize existed in the game until later, with the entire map design being one big Zelda shout out, and I'm all there for it. Just all there for it. Moving on next at number 5, we have Mario Kart 7. Honestly, in fairness, when it comes down to Mario Kart, 8 Deluxe is one of the more iconic games that, and honestly, one of the best Mario Kart games the franchise has ever had. And the fact that I've currently played through a bit of Mario Kart World says a lot. Yes, I finally played through Mario Kart World! But when it comes down to it, when it comes to the 3DS, I always enjoy I have to give it to Mario Kart 7. I mean, it's a fun title since a lot of my favorites are from that. And I love the hang glider stages, since the hang glider gimmick within the game, since it's just amazing. And while Mario Kart 8 Deluxe kind of dare I say, improved upon it, I love this game. This game is actually pretty amazing. So if you have a 3DS, and this game, enjoy it as much as you can. Part 2 coming soon.